There's a belief that quietly undermines your parenting. And I see so many parents of PDA, autistic, ADHD, or high needs kids carrying this belief. And that is, I'm not a good enough parent. And it's not just because you may lose it sometimes on your child who triggers you a lot, okay? But it's also because you're a parent who does so much to help their child function better in life. You research, you learn, you accommodate, you're adjusting your whole life around your child. And yet it often feels like nothing is really working to help your child function better. And then your brain quietly lands on, if this isn't getting better, it must be me. And this belief shows up in public moments when you compare yourself to other families, okay? And in those shame spiral moments after meltdowns where you think, I should be able to do this better. And over time, it stops feeling like just a thought and starts to feel like who you are. But here's the problem, okay? When you believe that, you stay stuck in the dysregulated pattern that you're trying so hard to get yourself out of to begin with. And it becomes almost impossible to feel calm, confident, or grounded as a parent, which you so desperately want to feel. So I get it. I was you. So in this episode, I'm going to show you where the belief of I'm not a good enough parent actually comes from, why it's important to challenge it, okay, and how to start seeing yourself in a completely different way so that you can show up more regulated, more grounded, and more like the parent that you want to be for your child. So let's begin. Okay, so there was a summer where my son became housebound and wouldn't do anything. He was at a point of burnout where his behaviors were becoming so extreme when we went out in public, okay, that he himself stopped wanting to go out. So he stopped going to gymnastics as well, which he loved, and which also helped his behavior so much. And he wouldn't even go for walks anymore. And, so here I was, right? I needed to do something about this. I wanted to keep him moving. I knew how important that was for his brain and for his body, for everything. Okay. And he loved swimming. Okay. So then I thought, okay, maybe we can go swimming in the neighbor's pool. But then we could no longer go there because when they were away, they gave access to us to their pool, which was great. But then we never knew who else might show up. And then that unpredictability would trigger my son into extreme behaviors. So then I decided to spend a lot of money building an above ground pool in our backyard. I felt like I had to do something, anything to keep him going outside, to keep him exercising, to help his brain, right? So I always felt so much responsibility to keep trying, to keep searching for answers, to do anything to get my son to change, right? Even spend money that we didn't have just to help him to function better and to do better in life. So we had this pool built, right? But guess what? My son didn't want to go in it. I tried and tried, and then I would get so upset. I spent all this money. I did all this work to get this pool installed because he said that he would use it. Eventually, I got him to go in sometimes. And then one day we were in the pool and the neighbors were in their pool with people over making a lot of noise. And my son started swearing at them really loud, okay? And they could hear. And I remember just cringing, wanting to sink into the water and disappear. I didn't want to deal with this. At the time, we lived in a neighborhood that, was seemingly like very respectable and more affluent. And you never heard anyone yelling or being rude. And I tried to support my son in the moment, okay? But mostly I just stayed quiet because that's usually what he needed. And then later I went over to the neighbors to apologize and explain things. And of course, they were understanding, okay? But inside me, a shame spiral had already started. I felt like I wasn't a good enough parent because I couldn't control my child, because I couldn't teach him to behave in a more respectable way, okay? I also felt like not a good enough parent because I couldn't get my son to do all these things, right? That could help him have a better life. Okay, so later that evening, my son escalated again over something small, and I lost it. Okay, I had held it together all day, managed everything, and that night it was like the tipping point. I felt so much anger and so much resentment, and underneath it, this painful thought, he's ruining my life. And then the next morning, I woke up in what I call a shame hangover. I felt awful for yelling, awful for the thoughts I had, and completely consumed by the belief I am not a good enough parent for him. I am failing him. Okay, so I'm sure some of you saw yourself in that story. Okay, and this is what I see so many parents go through. This is the reality of parenting a PDA, autistic, ADHD, or high needs child. Okay, a neurodivergent child where it can feel like you can never win. Everywhere you turn, there's triggering. There are so many chances to fail at what you believe a good enough parent should be. So you feel like you can't help your child function the way you think they should, that you can't control your own reactions all the time. And no matter how hard you try, it doesn't feel like enough. It feels like whatever you do, it's never enough, right? So your nervous system, after being pushed again and again and again, comes to one painful conclusion, and that is, I'm not a good enough parent, okay? But this belief, it doesn't come from truth. It comes actually from our conditioning and programming, okay? Deeply ingrained beliefs that we have in our system that unconsciously run on autopilot of what a good parent, quote unquote, good parent is supposed to look like, okay? But if we don't question these beliefs, we will stay stuck in dysregulation. Okay. So we will stay stuck in shame, right? And over time, we may even start to feel resentment toward our child, like we cannot be successful in this life because of them, like they are ruining our life. So I want you to walk, I want to walk you through, okay, why you feel this way, because it's so important to gain awareness of why you come to this conclusion automatically, like all of our brains do. Okay. And then I want to gently invite you into new reframes that are actually aligned with the truth of parenting a more high needs child. Okay. Okay. So let's get into the main reasons, right? So now that we understand how common this experience is, I want to walk you through the main reasons why you feel this way. And as I go through these, I invite you to just notice which ones land for you, okay? Because for most parents, it's not just one, it's many of these layered together. Okay, so number one reason you feel like you're not good enough is you feel ashamed for your own reactions, okay? This is one of the biggest ones for most parents, right? You feel bad, guilty, or ashamed that you get frustrated, angry, or lose it on your child sometimes, right? You feel like you should have more control over yourself. And then this part of it adds even more, where you know your child has a disability or more unique needs, and you're trying so hard to step into reframes, right? That reframes like, oh, this behavior is communication. It means they don't feel safe. But at the same time, your mind still sees it through old conditioning that tells you that they are being bad, wrong, purposeful, or willful, right? And this creates this internal conflict because on the one hand, you know better, right? Because you're doing all the research, you're learning all about nervous systems. But in the moment, you can't always do better, right? And that gap between what you know and how your body's reaction takes you over becomes this huge source of shame. Okay, so your nervous system, like the thing I want you to understand here is that your nervous system, it's being activated over and over again throughout the day. Okay, it gets taxed, overloaded, pushed into a chronic stress state. Okay, that's the reality with parenting our hypersensitive high needs kids. And when that happens, you start holding in a lot of activation. Okay, so you move into these patterns like holding it in, holding it in, holding it in, then blowing up. Okay, or you shut down and disconnect, wanting to give up and say, forget it, I'm done. Okay, I don't know about you, but I've cycled between those two. And then afterward, this shame comes in. and you tell yourself, I should be more calm. I should be more patient. I should be able to handle this better. And what's often missed here is that this is not a willpower issue, right? It's not this issue of, oh, I should be able to have more control over myself. This is really a capacity issue, okay? This is what we call in the nervous system world having capacity to be able to be with stress and handle the challenges. But when your nervous system is overloaded, you actually lose access to the parts of your brain that help you stay regulated and patient and connected. So it doesn't just feel like you're struggling, it starts to feel like something is wrong with you, right? We make meaning about our identity or our personality and we make it like a flaw in us, right? Like this is who we are. And that's where this then turns into identity level shame of, I'm just not a good enough parent. Okay. Okay. Reason number 2 that you don't feel like a good enough parent is that you feel like you're not doing enough for your child. Okay. This is so common amongst us parents who parent high needs kids. Okay. The reality is that our children, they resist demands, right? They don't want responsibility. They get overwhelmed by life, which on the surface can look like defiance or laziness or aggressive or purposeful or willful behavior. But underneath, they are struggling deeply to meet life's challenges. And you are trying so many things to help them develop skills and function better, right? But a lot of what you try doesn't work the way you hoped, right? It doesn't create the change that we want to see in our children, or at least not yet. And then this creates this constant question in our minds. What am I doing wrong? What else should I be doing? I need to keep searching, right? And at the same time, your child needs so much from you, okay? More attention, more co-regulation, more energy, more patience, more attunement, and you are giving so much to them. But because your efforts are not showing the results that your brain expects, right? Meaning that your child does better in life, is able to do more, then your brain comes up with the conclusion of, I'm not doing enough. Okay. And then underneath this is another layer that's often not spoken about enough, is that you don't just feel responsible for what you're doing today, but you feel responsible for your child's future. Okay. So we all feel responsible for whether our child will be able to function in life in the future, right? Will they be independent? Will they be okay? So when things aren't improving in the way that you expected, it doesn't just feel like you're falling short in the moment, okay? It feels like I'm failing their entire life, right? Like it's an enormous weight on you. It feels like you have to carry the load of how well they do in the future. So that's tough, right? And on top of that, so much of what you are doing is invisible, right? You're constantly adjusting, preventing escalations, co-regulating, thinking ahead, managing environments, but none of this is visible in a way that shows clear success. So it can feel like I'm doing everything and nothing is working, right? When all the efforts you put in, you're not seeing the results in your child, then it reinforces the belief that I'm not enough. I'm not a good enough parent. Okay. So number 3, let's get into number 3, the reason why you feel like you're not a good enough parent. So just notice again, take it in, see what lands in your system. Is this you? Okay. Number 3 reason, which is very common, is you feel responsible for their behavior in public. So another reason that this hits so deeply is because of what happens in public. So when your child has an outburst in public, right? Oh, cringeworthy. None of us want to be there, right? But the reality is your child is overwhelmed. They're feeling some kind of pressure or demand, or they're having sensory overload. But it feels like you're a bad parent because you're not able to control your child. Okay. And there is a deeply ingrained belief here that I would challenge, we all pretty much carry, right? And that is that your child's behavior equals how good of a parent you are, right? Your child's behavior is a reflection of how good a parent you are. And also a second belief that You are responsible for your child behaving well. So then if they don't behave well, right? Somehow it's your responsibility, right? You've done something wrong. Okay. So then there's these deeper, like underneath all that, then there's even deeper beliefs, right? That this kind of behavior that our child is doing is unacceptable, that this kind of behavior is judged, that it's shunned by society, that something is wrong if this kind of behavior is happening. And that makes sense, right? That makes sense why we would feel that way. These beliefs live in all of us, right? So when your child explodes in public, it doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It activates the part of your nervous system that is wired for belonging. Okay. And suddenly it feels like we are going to be judged. We are going to be rejected. We are going to be outcasted. Okay. This is how our brains work. And then what happens? You react or you freeze or you try to manage the situation as best you can. But afterwards, the shame inevitably comes in and you land in this feeling of, I'm not a good enough parent. Okay. So, number 4 reason you don't feel like a good enough parent is that you have very human, natural, okay, and I would say even normal, negative thoughts and feelings about your child, but you feel really ashamed of them. Okay. So, I've seen this with so many parents. Okay. Is that we feel like we're not a good enough parent because we have these negative thoughts and feelings about our child, right? We find ourselves getting irritated or agitated by our child or overstimulated by their voice, their behaviors, their constant needs. And then it can overwhelm our nervous system and put us into this stress state, right? And then the thoughts that come in, right? Because of the fight or flight reactions that get triggered within us, thoughts that come in like, I want to run away. I wish I never had kids. They are ruining my life. Or I need to get better control of them, right? Or moments where you feel deep resentment or even a part of you that feels like it hates how difficult this is. And then immediately shame. Okay, because you believe that you should feel unconditional love and full acceptance at all times. But what's important to understand here is that your nervous system state drives your story. Okay, and when you are in a chronic stress state, your brain moves into negativity bias, right? It only sees the negative and it generates negative thoughts and emotions toward the very thing that is stressing your system the most. Okay, so then it will activate fight or flight energy, right? Wanting to escape, wanting to get away, wanting relief. And this is what your survival system is designed to do. Okay, so I want you to understand this. So natural. It's what our survival system is designed to do, but we are not our survival system, right? We can become the curious observer and the watcher of this, right? But there's another layer here, and about how intense that these feelings feel of wanting to escape, to get away, wanting relief, having resentment, how intense this feels is often connected to your own past traumas. Okay, your own unmet needs, your own experience of not being able to fight, flee, or express yourself when you were younger. Okay. But these thoughts and feelings are not your truth. This is important to understand. They are your nervous system in a state, okay? And story is driven by the state that you're in, okay? And when you don't understand that crucial understanding of our nervous system, right, then you start to identify with these thoughts and feelings as you. And then that triggers shame and it makes it mean that, I'm a bad parent. Okay, so now number 5, you feel like you're failing your other children too. Okay, so this is a common reason why parents feel like they're not good enough, right? When you have more than one child, right, siblings in the picture, and you feel responsible for protecting all of the kids. And this makes sense, right? You're the parent. Okay. But you're often stuck in this impossible internal bind. Okay. One child has high needs and intense behaviors and requires so much of you. And then the other children are impacted by it, right? They may not get as much time, energy, or attention. They may get hurt. They may feel the effects of the environment, and no matter what you do, it feels like someone's needs are not being met. So you tell yourself, I should be able to handle this in a way that satisfies everyone. I should be able to do this better. And again, you land in, I'm failing all of my kids. Okay. And at the same time, you feel guilt for giving more time and energy to the child with high needs and guilt for not giving enough time to the others. And this creates a constant internal pressure that has no real resolution. Okay. But the expectation itself that you're putting on yourself is not realistic, right? But it still feels like I should be able to do more and I'm not a good enough parent. Okay. Now, last but not least, reason number 6 is that you are constantly comparing, even if you don't realize it. Okay. Oh, comparison. Oh, comparison. It's like the worst thing we can do to ourselves. Okay. It's a quiet but powerful driver of this feeling of not feeling good enough. Okay. Our brains are designed for it. So that's one of the challenges, right? Comparison. And even if you're not consciously noticing that you're comparing yourself, your nervous system is constantly taking in information from the world around you and comparing, because like our brains are just designed this way, right? We compare to other kids, other families. Social media is a huge one. Okay. It's so toxic for our brains in terms of comparison. School environments, right? Societal expectations. And so then the nervous system and brain are constantly registering, oh, they're doing it differently. Oh, they're doing it better. Oh, their kids are okay. Why isn't mine? Or even, why can they handle this and I can't? And this creates a constant internal message of, we are behind, we are different, and we are not enough. And over time, that gets internalized, not just as circumstance, okay, but as identity. Okay, so those are the 6 reasons why you often feel like you're not a good enough parent, okay? So when you put all of this together, right, the nervous system overload, the conditioning, the expectations, the comparison, the responsibility, it makes complete sense why you feel like you're not a good enough parent, okay? But here's the truth. The way that you are measuring yourself right now is based on standards that were never designed for this kind of parenting. So I want you to just take that in for a moment, okay? We are measuring ourselves against standards that were never designed for this kind of parenting. Why do we do that? Okay, that's our brains are designed to do that, right? So if we don't update the frame through which you see yourself, then you will continue to feel like you are feeling. Okay, not because you are, because the standard itself is misaligned, right? The standard comes from what we've observed growing up around us, okay? And how we were treated growing up. Okay, so this is where it becomes so important to begin stepping into new reframes that I'm going to invite you into that are more aligned with truth, that are more life affirming, and that support you in thriving and showing up as a regulated parent that you want to be for your kids. So let's get into the reframes, which is my favorite part. Okay, so reframe number 1 that I'm inviting you into. Okay, and just keep in mind, your system might have resistance to these reframes, and that makes sense. So just allow the resistance to be here and try to be in as much of a curious state as possible to just, take on the possibility of these reframes. Okay, so reframe number 1. I am a good enough parent even if I get frustrated, angry, and lose it sometimes. Okay, so what matters more is that I come back to connection and repair. Okay, this is such an important reframe. We focus so much on the getting frustrated, angry, losing it, and then making meaning that somehow that we're not a good enough parent because we're human. Okay, and that happens, right? All parents get frustrated and lose it sometimes. And I want to say that this is not what defines the child's experience, okay, unless it becomes something that is more verbally, physically, emotionally abusive or harmful much of the time, okay? The nervous system right? It's important to understand that we can lose it with our kids, but when we focus on connection and repair, the nervous system learns regulation and and resilience, okay, from connection and repair more than it ever does from having any rupture. Okay, rupture is important in life. We need stress in the system, and then we need connection and repair. Okay, and that's what helps the nervous system to build resilience. Okay, so when the shame spiral happens, I invite you to hold compassion for yourself. Okay, you are caring more than most. It's not easy to stay regulated in this kind of parenting. You have a lot on your plate. Okay, you're asked to do more than most, right? So allow yourself to see how much you actually do for your child and then forgive yourself, okay? And move towards reconnection and repair and helping your child to receive the message that the relationship is always stronger than any storm that came through, okay? And that you can take responsibility and keep trying because then they learn this too. Okay, so number 2, reframe. I am doing enough for my child, even if I don't see the results in them yet. This is a huge one. This is a huge one, my friends. I invite you, take that in for a moment. I am doing enough for my child, even if I don't see the results yet. Okay, we are not bad parents because our efforts don't equal the outcomes that we expect, right? That our child doesn't turn out, you know, a certain way, right? That our brain expects them to because of our efforts. Okay, and yet so many of us deeply believe this, and you see it everywhere, right? Parents wanting to show their child's accomplishments, right? Because they're proud, and but it's also, I would say, because they want to feel like they're doing enough, right? It's like a lot of us feel this insecurity, whether we're parenting high needs kids or not, right? We want to feel like, um, we want to feel like good enough parents. And one of the ways we do that is to show our child's accomplishments, right? But a child's success does not define a parent's worth. So that is a one to really take in here. A child's success does not define a parent's worth. Okay, this is where we get it all wrong. A child and a parent are worthy and enough simply for being who they are. A child and a parent are worthy and enough. We are all worthy and enough simply for being who we are. Okay? And this is where it's important to understand something that is often missed in this kind of parenting, that this is a long-term process. Okay? The work that you're putting into your kids right now, right? It's not going to result in quick behavior changes or show linear progress. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and you're going to see results further down the road, right? You're supporting a nervous system that needs more time, more safety, more co-regulation, more capacity before a change can naturally happen. And that kind of development does not always show immediate results. So when you don't see the change right away, it doesn't mean you're not doing enough. Okay, so it's really important for us to take this in. It means that the work you are doing is happening at a deeper level in ways that are not always visible yet. Okay, and it needs more time. Okay, and this is where a big shift needs to happen internally. You don't have to keep doing more and more just to finally feel like you are enough. Okay, you don't have to constantly search, push, or overextend yourself in order to prove yourself or your worth as a parent. Okay, because this is what leads to burnout. Instead, this is the invitation to begin relating to this differently, to trust that what you are doing matters, even if you don't see it yet. Okay, to allow your child's timeline to be different and to begin separating your sense of enoughness that from outcomes. Okay, separate enoughness from outcomes that you're seeing right now. Okay, because when you really take this in, it does create a kind of freedom, a deeper, more grounded kind of worth that is not dependent on the outcomes of your child. And from that place, you actually show up with more capacity, more presence, and more sustainability, which supports your child far, far more than constant over-efforting ever could. Okay. Okay, reframe number 3. I am worthy and enough, even if my child behaves badly in public. Okay, this is a hard one. Okay, my child's behavior does not define my worth as a parent. Okay, but believing that it does is one of the hardest beliefs to let go of because we are wired to belong. We are wired to not be outcasted, but the system we live in is based on normative standards. And our children are more sensitive. They feel more. They get stressed by more. So, how they behave in public is often not something that we can fully control. Okay, and when you can start to separate your worth from their behavior, their public meltdowns begin to feel like a moment of stress instead of a cringeworthy shame spiral of not enoughness. Okay, this is where you begin to reclaim your sense of self and separate your sense of self from how your child behaves. Okay. And then that creates so much more regulation in your system, more freedom. Okay. And a deeper sense of confidence in knowing how to respond when those public moments do happen. Okay. Reframe number 4 I'm inviting you into is I'm a good enough parent, even if I have negative thoughts and emotions about my child. Okay, this is a big understanding. Okay, big understanding. Your nervous system state drives the story that's coming from your brain. Your state is not who you truly are. Okay, so I teach this a lot in my course. You have a true self, right? And then you have a survival system, right? Your survival system state is not who you truly are. And when you are under chronic stress, your brain will generate negative thoughts and emotions toward your child, right? Because your child is seen as this source of stress in your system, and your child becomes this big cue of danger to your system. And then it activates fight and flight in your system, this feeling of wanting to run away, wanting relief, wanting to escape. And this is what your survival system is designed to do, but it's not your truth. And when you can recognize this as a natural response of your nervous system, then you can begin to what I call unblend from it, right? Instead of being blended with our survival system, we unblend from it and we be with it, right? From our true self. We become the curious observer, a watcher of this survival system doing its thing because we're in a state of stress and seeing this as a natural survival reaction that is not who you truly are. Okay, that your system can have these very human reactions and still know that they do not define you. Okay? Okay. Now, number 5 reframe is I am a good enough parent even if I cannot meet all of my children's needs all the time. Okay? Or at the same time, right? All the time. This is where it can feel like you wish you could clone yourself and you wish you had more of you to go around. I've heard this from so many parents. But instead, you stretch yourself thin, okay? And then you berate yourself when you can't meet everyone's needs. And to be honest, it's not a realistic expectation, okay? You're doing the best you can. And there's something really important to remind yourself here that I am a good enough parent for my children because I am doing my best to support each of them, even if I have to move between their needs at times, right? Because that is the reality. You are moving between needs. You're shifting your attention. You are responding as best you can in each moment, not perfectly, but with care. It's better to focus on connection over perfection and quality time over quantity and repair over getting it right all the time. Okay. And then this is where another deeper truth comes in. I am a good enough parent for my children because I am showing up with care, meeting their needs over time, and repairing when I can't meet everything in the moment, right? Because needs are not meant to be met all at once. They are met over time, okay, across many moments through connection, rupture, and repair. Okay, but there is another layer here that can be hard to take in, but it's important. Okay, and this is what I say to all of my clients who have, multiple children. Can this experience for the kids, the ones who you feel like are being harmed because of the higher needs child, can this experience be a part of life for them, right? Like, can this pain be something that is allowed to exist? Because the reality is that no one goes through life without challenge, right? And if you are providing love, care, support, attunement overall, then can it be okay that not everything is perfect, right? And that you're not going to be able to meet everyone's needs all the time. Okay? Can you do that without defining yourself by it? Okay? So I know this one is a tough one, but I invite you to just contemplate that and see if you can take that in. Okay, and last but not least, reframe number 6. I am a good enough parent even if my path and my child's path looks different from others. Okay, this is a really important one. I do not need to compare my child, my parenting, or our life to anyone else's in order to measure my worth. This is a really important reframe, okay? Because comparison is happening all the time, even when you don't realize it. Your nervous system is constantly scanning other kids, other families, social media, school environments, and it's picking up they're doing better, they're further ahead, they're handling this more easily. And then it creates this internal pressure that says, we are behind, we should be further along, something is wrong. But what's often not questioned is this: behind according to who? According to what standard? Okay, we need to question this. Behind according to who? According to what standard? Most of the standards that we are comparing ourselves to are based on normative development and normative nervous systems. Okay, but your child is not operating through that template. And that doesn't mean that something is wrong. It means that the path is just different. And can that be okay? Can that be okay? Okay? Because when you stay in comparison, okay, you will always feel like you're falling short and that your child is falling short. And we don't want to feel that way about our child or ourselves, right? When you're measuring a nonlinear, highly individual journey against a linear, standardized one, right, you will feel like you're falling short. So the invitation here is to gently come out of comparison and come back into your own lane, okay? To trust that your child's development does not have to follow society's timelines. To trust that growth can look different, okay? To trust that meaning, success, and fulfillment do not have to look like what you see around you. And most importantly, to stop using someone else's path as the measure of your worth as a parent. Because when you do that, you will always lose, right? And when you come back to your own experience and allow your own experience to be enough as it is, you create space for something else. Space for trust, for release, okay? And a different kind of confidence, one that is not dependent on keeping up. Okay, so here's the important thing to understand, okay? If you don't question the beliefs that you are holding about what makes you a good enough parent, you will continue to feel like you're failing. And it's not because you are. It's because the standard you are measuring yourself against was never designed for this kind of parenting. But when you begin to see through a different lens, okay, a more compassionate lens, a more realistic lens for our kind of parenting, then something shifts, something softens. There's a little more space, a little more breath, right? You begin to loosen the grip of the shame, the grip of the pressure, right? The constant feeling of not enoughness. And you begin to see the truth more clearly, okay? That you are not failing. You are parenting in conditions that require more than most. And you are showing up in ways that stretch you, challenge you, and ask more of you than you ever imagined. And even in the moments where it feels messy, okay, where you lose it, where things don't go the way you hoped, that still does not define you. Okay? Because when you begin to look at your parenting through a more truthful lens and the 6 reframes I'm inviting you into here, you start to recognize something that was always there, okay? That you have been showing up, that you have been trying, and that you have been caring deeply. And maybe, just maybe, you have been a good enough parent all along. So if this spoke to you, please comment, please share. I'm sure that other parents need to hear this messaging too. Thank you for being here today.